Well, this is the point. If you look at the pyramidal structure of everything, where everything is a pyramid and a pyramid within a pyramid, and how they're compartmentalized. So the vast majority of people in a pyramid, be it the police or social services, or child protection or whatever, they're compartmentalized to the point where they only have to know as much as they need to know to do their individual job. They don't know how it all fits together. And when you look at these pyramids, you don't have to control many positions within the police and within social services to stop an investigation going ahead into this stuff, or to target someone and cover it up. You only have to cover those positions that have the power to decide if the investigation is going to go ahead or not. See, what happened, this is a classic in Belgium. There was an investigator who got on the case of this guy, Mark Dutroux, who was found to have killed children and had kids in cages under the stairs and everything. And he got on it early. You know, as we know, with many of these things, like false flags, the information really is most vulnerable to come out immediately after it's happened, before they've got the lid on. Well, this guy, very quickly, a genuine man, started to connect, and he said this publicly, started to connect Dutroux to very senior elite people within the Belgian establishment. And he started talking about the fact that arrests were imminent. What did they do? They sacked him. They sacked him, and under some spurious reason. And 300,000 people were on the streets of Brussels protesting. But they then put another guy in who completely put the lid on, and the whole thing was squashed. This is how it is. See, I exposed a guy called Ted Heath, who was Prime Minister of Britain between 1970 and 74, who signed us into what is now the European Union, as a mega child killer and Satanist and child abuser. And I put it in a book in 1998, and he was alive for a long time afterwards. Journalists rang him when it came out, read the passage to him, and all he said is, David Icke must be mad, and nothing else happened. I've been naming Father George Bush in exactly the same way since the mid-90s, and the thing is, the ratio of pedophiles, child abusers, and Satanists to positions are much more higher in the upper echelons than in the general population, because these bloodlines, these hybrids, operate in the upper, well, cesspit really, but you know what I mean, upper echelons of society. This is why there's so many pedophiles and Satanists among politicians and people that run the banking system, etc. In my last book, Alex, Human Race Get Off Your Knees, just before it went to print, I came across this document, detailed document, came out of Australia, and it claimed to be not a deathbed confession, because he agreed with it, but a deathbed expose of how Satanism runs the world, as he put it. And he was supposed to be a guy in a major satanic lodge in Sydney who died in 2004, and this stuff eventually came out. Well, I can't say if it was genuine or not. What I can say after 21 years of investigating this, but whoever wrote it had a stunningly accurate, detailed knowledge of Satanism. And he talked in there about how they bring politicians into this child abuse to actually entrap them, so that they will, from that time onwards, never say no to anything they're told to introduce or campaign for or block.
Well, let me stop you right there, David. Last night on the Nightly News, I showed the images of George W. Bush kissing Jeff Gannon on the head and hugging him at press conferences, the male madam. I showed the Washington Times and news clips, CBS, where they admitted in the late 80s, early 90s, the call boy rings in the White House after midnight. Same thing happened under the last Bush. That all came out, the hundreds of visits. I showed mainstream news articles where Nixon admitted at Bohemian Grove it was a giant, quote, gay orgy, where they fly in the gay porn stars. All of this is there, and Nixon basically said, you've got to go there to become a made man in politics, even though he didn't like it. And now we see, the Happy Valley, the Sunny Valley, whatever name, what is it, Sunny Valley, Happy Valley? Yeah, Happy Valley, there in Pennsylvania. And now we're learning exactly what I said on Monday. It's just like the Texas Youth Commission. It's across-the-board cover-up. The police knew. They all knew. And now probably nobody else is going to go to jail but the one individual they've got to burn because they can bring down the whole system with this information. And then you learn that it's these children's charities that these big charities for children who are above reproach, and the CPS, they can get away with bloody murder. And DynCorp is the biggest global contractor, Dave. I'm going to come back from break and talk about this, who's been caught, Chicago Tribune, kidnapping kids worldwide. Then they're the biggest private contractor in the U.S. as CPS taking kids. I mean, this is right out in the open.
Yes, this is a great amalgamation, a great tapestry of different organizations and different networks and different excuses that all have the same common theme: getting children into their control. This is why, as the insatiable desire for children increases, that now they've over the last little while in America, in Britain, in increasing numbers of countries, they have social services or so-called child protection, taking children from loving parents for the most outrageous, spurious reasons.
Stay there. Let's talk about it.
Into the system.
Yeah. CPS is literal Renfield vampire agents coming to get your kids. David Icke with us 5 minutes into the next hour. He's very gracious to have joined us, davidicke.com. Gracious because he's ill, and he's going to be speaking in several areas here in the United States. In fact, I'll get him to plug that here in a moment, but he's like I am. He's so busy trying to cover the info, he never even gets to basically what he's doing. But here's just 2 articles I saw today in my news stack. All over the United States, children as young as 2 are put on government school buses now, because now government's trying to make it mandatory that at age 2 to 3, your children are sent to government schools, so they totally have you. Here it is out of Houston Television. It says, 4-year-old left at wrong bus stop. And this is out of Channel 2 in Houston. 2 miles away, her 4-year-old son, and then she got all panicked, and they're saying that's not endangering the child. Well, it's endangering the child to give your child to the state at any age. These public schools are full of these predators. It's run by predators with a bunch of naive people around them. And then here's another article. But again, I saw an article a few weeks ago where, what was it, a 10-year-old was throwing a fit in the car, and so the mom said, get out and walk the last half mile, and they took the kid. They said, that's child abuse. I remember my mother plenty of times if I was being bad, saying, okay, we're a mile from home, go ahead and get out. I remember when I was 10 years old, her doing that. And that's a way of, okay, you won't shut up and stop doing that, or whatever you're arguing, just you walk home. But see, I'm sitting up to your room without dinner because you stole cookies out of the cookie jar, whatever. Nowadays, they'll take your child for that. I have a video. It's going to go up at Infowars.com. I sent it to Paul. We're in Kentucky. It's a divorce court, and the judge didn't even allege the parents did anything. He said, you're arguing with each other. You haven't agreed on this divorce. I'm just taking your kid. There are people that want your kids. I'm getting Draco on you. He actually says draconian on you. And he says, I'm going to get violent with you. And he all gets on this weird power trip. And these family court judges were set up about 110 years ago in England and the U.S. as eugenics judges. They could say, I'm ordering you sterilized. It's all done outside law. And they've been violating the Constitution for a long time. But here's another article, Daily Mail. Government doctors gave 1,500 children as young as 5 chemical kosh. And I guess that's a mix of different. It says chemical kosh with psychotic drugs. An investigation by Channel 4 found. Well, they're drugging newborn babies now. So it's all about abusing children, and every wicked tyranny has been. And as David Icke was saying, who can deny now? Who can deny now that every major institution out there gets busted raping kids or worse? And that every institution, big one, is covering it up. These people are probably 1% of the population or less. I actually went and looked up some of the statistics last night. They estimate it's less than 1%. Why are they running everything? Because that's where they can get away with it. They can only get away with it in the power positions. And every culture ends up being run by a priest class that demands that they be able to chop your children up. Every culture. This is the curse of humanity. And it's not a normal human activity. David Icke, you have the floor, my friend. Continue with where this is going and why you think they're bringing this out now. I asked you during the break, and we concur. And then let's get into Iran and the huge acceleration that's happening right now. What's happening with the euro, all of it. David Icke.
Well, you see, this is coming out now in some ways, I guess, as you've indicated yourself, as maybe a warning to others. You know, this is what happens when you, if you don't do what we say or whatever. And it can also be coming out because it is so prevalent. It is so massive. I mean, you know, I've been calling the Church of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church as it is now, the Church of Babylon relocated for decades, and it is, and it's provable fact. It was relocated to Rome, and they changed the name and changed a few names in the story. It was basically the same, and they were doing this, sacrificing children and abusing children in Babylon and Mesopotamia and all that stuff, all those thousands of years ago. And thus, the Church of Babylon relocated is probably, I mean, wherever I go, I was in Australia just very recently, and the stories are running in Australia about children being raped and abused by Roman Catholic clergy and priests in Australia. It's everywhere. And when you are the Church of Babylon relocated, and you are operating along the same lines and the same techniques and the same methods that you have for thousands of years, then of course you're going to be a haven for the abuse of children. And in that document that I mentioned by this Satanist in Australia, a deathbed kind of document that he wrote, he said about the way that politicians were pulled into this, that this is a direct quote, politicians are introduced by a carefully graded set of criteria and situations that enable them to accept that their victims will be, quote, our little secret. Young children sexually molested and physically abused by politicians worldwide are quickly used as sacrifices. In Australia, the bodies are hardly ever discovered, for Australia is still a wilderness. And what I've found over the years, and this intensive research, is that in the populated countries, in Europe and North America, etc., although obviously there's a lot of wilderness land still of a type in America, but they control the crematoria system. They control the medical system, which does the people that do the postmortems, etc. They cover every single base. And you know, there was that guy who was the son of Sam killer in New York called David Berkowitz, and he was the serial killer, yes, and he admitted it. He went to jail for it, but then he started a correspondence with a Christian minister in which he explained that, yes, David Berkowitz, he did it. He did kill those people, but he was doing it as a front for a satanic coven in New York. And he said this, very telling quote, Satanists are peculiar people. They aren't ignorant peasants and semi-literate natives. Rather, their ranks are filled with doctors, lawyers, businessmen, and basically highly responsible citizens. They are not a careless group who are apt to make mistakes, but they are secretive and bonded together by a common need and desire to mete out havoc in society. It was Aleister Crowley, of course a very famous Satanist, who said, I want blasphemy, murder, rape, revolution, anything bad. And what these people have the ability to do is live their lives with a stunning schizophrenia. There was a lady some years ago now who was interviewed on the Oprah Winfrey Show who talked about the fact that she was brought up in a satanic family in Chicago, of course where Obama and Emmanuel, all these people came from, and that during the day they were pillars of the establishment. They were pillars of society. And then at night, everything changed. She said, but at night, what was bad during the day was good. What was good during the day was bad. She talked about being forced to witness children being sacrificed, animals being sacrificed, and all the abuse.
Well, they had brood mothers.
This stuff is happening. It's real.
Well, sure, they had brood mothers, but let me just go back and back up what you just said. Nationwide, hospitals have been caught killing people for their organs. My dad told me about this before it was ever on the news, because he's a dentist, he knows physicians. He said, don't sign your organ donor card when you go in to get your driver's license. And I'm like, yeah, right. I go, why? And he goes, well, they don't, a lot of places will actually let you die if you come in for something minor. They'll kill you. He goes, that's what I've been told by people. And I said, do you have specifics? He goes, no, but doctors don't sign their organ donor card. Then it came out on 60 Minutes, and the biggest place was Chicago, but it turned out Austin's been caught doing it and taking people's retinas and killing people that could have been saved and taking blood for 40 years worldwide of all babies. It's now 40 years next month. 40 years, a global UN program. They tell you it's a blood test for your baby. Now they admit it goes into this global database.